Hey guys, I just wanted to let you know that yesterday, in case you missed the interview with Beth Marchiano, I really beg you guys to go and listen to that interview once again because she went over some key elements of what you need to do to have a remote workforce. And now we're being forced to work remotely. So this is going to become important that you actually have a foundation of how to do it. And that's what yesterday's calls are about, building a foundation for a strong and a robust remote workforce, things that you probably wasn't thinking about. Okay. And Beth really laid out on the table. Now today, I actually asked her to come back and she agreed. And now we're going to go over some specific tools that you can use, that you can consider. Nothing that we're doing. Remember, we don't get paid for anything of any tools that we're going to mention or endorse or anything like that. It's just tools that we've played around with and we've actually used. So that's why we're actually giving you advice on it. Maybe you can look them up yourself and see if it works for your business. But today's episode, it's another special episode, by the way. It's all about the tools that you can use to then support your new standard operating process, which is remote working. And without further ado, I'm going to bring you to this next special episode starting right now.
Hello, and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses, the podcast where you will discover all the latest and greatest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are not getting the results you are looking for from your digital marketing efforts, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy, and I just want to welcome you to another special episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses. You guys, if you want to get a hold of me, you know how to get me. It's www.lbmsllc.com, or you can just email me at info@lbmsllc.com, and then someone in my illustrious staff will connect with you. Now, if you remember yesterday, I was able to interview a very special person, and she enlightened us, as I told you. And I actually coerced her to come back, and she's back here with me another day to give us some more insights about remote work. But we're going to title this episode a little bit different. Yes, it's still remote work, but we want to title it by online business tools and how to leverage them. Because the one thing you have to understand when you're doing remote work is you have to know the right business tool to use, the right online business tools, how to use it. And there's no one out there better than Beth Marchiano to teach you, or at least enlighten you, or maybe to introduce you to some of these tools. So with that, I'm just going to shut up and just let Beth take the floor again and just knock us off our socks like she did yesterday. So Beth, are you out there?
I'm out here. How are you?
Hey, loving life, man. It's another day, another dollar, right?
Right, exactly.
Another pandemic. This is another COVID-19 day.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, I don't even know what day it is, so we're good. Even with all the tools we might have available to us, sometimes I'm like, what day is it again?
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? This is the new normal. This is reality setting in. But as I said in the intro, Beth, and again, folks, before we even get started, as you can tell from yesterday's interview, and if you didn't see it, I invite you to go and check it out because it's going to help you. But if you can tell from yesterday's interview, this woman can bring it. So I am going to prepare you right now. I'm going to prepare you right now to make sure that you have a pen and paper handy, because I'm just afraid of what's going to happen here if you don't. And of course, again, I'm going to encourage you to download this episode because you're going to want to listen to it over and over again. I can assure you of that. So I'm just going to start, if you don't mind, Beth, I'm just going to start out and just start asking you questions. I mean, they already know you, so I don't need to introduce you again. But
thank you.
So let's get going. So I mean, here's just a few things. I know you're a busy woman, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I just want to see what we could do here. So let me see. So there are online tool categories, like what are they? Like, so we're going to talk about business tools to support some of the things we talked about yesterday, that we, standard operating procedures. You talked about some communication stuff. You talked about and again, if you didn't hear it, I encourage you to hear it again yesterday's interview. But you talked about, reporting structures and all that stuff. But what are the online tools, and what categories can we break them down into that people are going to need going forward?
Yeah, there's basically three main categories that everything can kind of be broken out into. Really two, but I like to break it out into three because some people use proprietary products and it doesn't necessarily allow for all of them to integrate well together. So I break it down into three. You want a communication platform, and that communication platform is typically voice and email, right? So you have your telephone communication and your email communication platform. Now, some of them will involve texting as well. But again, you just want to have that communication platform together. There are conferencing platforms, so video conferencing, teleconferencing. Sometimes they're available on your communication platform, sometimes they're not. And if you are in an in-office environment, you're probably having the standard telephone system, but it doesn't necessarily give you texting and video capability. But when you're in a remote environment, you can have it all. So it's kind of interesting how things are set up. And I'll get into that, I think, a little bit later, because I know we want to kind of dive deep. But the overall platforms are communication, conferencing, and then the last one is collaboration. And collaboration is where you, your team members, and potentially clients can all be using a system in order to not only to effectively communicate with project management, CRMs, which is basically any kind of lead gen services that you have, you can put into a platform and follow that and do some data tracking. But those are the three main categories.
Well, so just out of curiosity, so for collaboration purposes, you mean something like a tool like, say, Slack? You mean something
Sure.
like that?
Yeah, so you have Slack, you have Teams for Office 365, there's Asana, Teamwork, Dropbox, there's SharePoint, OneNote, Google Drive. I mean, you can go like on and on with the kind of platforms. It's based on FreeCamp, Basecamp. They're going to come to my mind and I'm just going to yell them out.
That's called Beth Marchiano's Tourette's.
Right, exactly. luckily it's about work right now. But there are a number of collaborative platforms, and what that means is it allows collaboration, obviously, right? It's in the name, but that enables your team to effectively communicate on a project, even if they're not in the same office, but you can certainly use it in an office environment too. It allows, some of them will allow for client input, which could be really important, right? Like, especially if you're in construction related industry or in an industry where you need client approval, like a proof before moving forward, that will enable the process to be a little bit more streamlined, right? Like you can automate, have it sent, have them approve or do the change order and get it back to you all in one system. A lot of times when you are not using that kind of a platform, they have to download it, they got to sign it, they got to scan it and get it back to you. Collaborative platforms allow for ease of use. The other thing that you could also do is have internal communications, which could, for lack of a better word, kind of stop the email insanity, right? Like you can use these collaborative platforms to have a more efficient chat that's almost text-like in nature, but then can also be with that person's account. So you could potentially have an ongoing conversation specific about, client Jane Doe, and it all is in client Jane Doe's folder. So something really useful in terms of instant recall and applying it to the right account, and then having access points for different users. And some of these collaborative platforms also have levels of users. So you can have, as the owner, you can have obviously full and complete access, and you can drill it down to where certain people can't get into certain sections. Like if there's a sales team, and I don't say versus because you all should be collaborative and together, but sometimes things that are in sales don't necessarily need to be seen by the manufacturing side, et cetera. So break it down with that. And then you can have client interaction too. You can break it down where clients only have access to one particular area, even within their project, right? So if you have a larger project and you have a client thread only, then you're able to get information directly into the account. So pretty effective tools that are out there.
Okay. So I want to go back a little bit into communication systems, because we kind of talked about it. But what, exactly what do you mean? Like what do you mean by communication systems? Isn't that email? I mean, isn't that what a communication system is, or is there something else?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So communication systems do include emails, which are done in a different kind of platform. But most communication systems now are moving towards what is a VoIP system, voice over IP. Allows for mobility. It allows for connective devices that you don't have to purchase. So for example, my team has phone applications on their cell phone. So they downloaded the app. An example would be Ring Central, Line 2, Grasshopper, of the like. Download the app and it changes your phone. Google Voice, right here. Beth is doing the Tourette's again.
Tourette's.
The Google Voice, but you can download the applications for your phone, and you use the application to make the calls. It's branded. It still comes out through the phone line that it needs, whether it's a business number or if it's an assigned extension, etc. But their cell phone is now being used for work, and it enables them to be able to take calls more seamlessly. Headphones are already in place for a lot of people who have these cell phones, and you don't have to buy a whole lot of different things in order to make it work. So, and it's on an application, which is really, really cool how this, I geek out a little bit about some of this stuff. I can run a report based on the platform and the user in how many calls were outbound, how many calls were inbound, how many calls were answered live, how many calls went to voicemail, what are the times of these calls coming in, do I need to expand my hours of operation to include times, and do I need a chatting, like my data needs to work for me. And these voice over IP systems are giving you a lot more data, at readily accessible data, I should clarify, than some of the standard phone systems that most people have in their office. So for, real estate is always something that people talk about. And if you're in an in-office environment, you don't want to clutter a desk up. You want to use it for whatever space is needed. And if you can get rid of a phone and use your computer or cell phones in order to do the same kind of work, which includes, you can conference, you can merge calls, you can transfer calls, you can have a phone tree, right? So a call can come in, it can get auto answered and go, through the right extensions, or it could go answered by a person and then transferred to an extension. It can go to direct extensions. There's a lot of capability that you have on these VoIP systems that most phone systems may have or may not have, but VoIP also offers expanded services. For example, I can text clients through a voice over IP app. I can send direct messaging through voice over IP. I may be able to video conference through voice over IP. And this becomes important in this environment when we're looking at compliance-related activities and businesses. So Ring Central has a HIPAA version that you can make calls. And again, you're using HIPAA compliant, even though you're using your own cell phone, you're using the app to do it. You can text through there, you can video through there, and it's protected. It's encrypted, and it comes back. And I'm not, doing a Ring Central commercial. I'm just saying that there are apps that allow these things to happen.
Right.
And it's on your phone, so you can take it with you. You don't have to be in a 9-to-5 desk. The other thing that's nice about it, and this again comes from a leveraging perspective, is do you have to have your team answering calls in office? Could you have a team answering calls outside and then transferring into your staff that's on site doing the work? I mean, there are a variety of different ways that you can do. And some of that may be important with the slow and gradual re-entry to the workforce, right? When we get back into the working environment, you might not be able to have your full complement of employees back in there. So again, ways that you can use the systems virtually that'll enable for you to continue to do business. But VoIP allows for a lot, just so many different ways in order to communicate with your team and your clients.
So it's kind of like going back to yesterday's conversation, Beth, this will further justify you getting a separate Wi-Fi connection in your home, right? Because that's putting more strain onto that network if you have a VoIP system connected and everything.
It could, but VoIP could also use Wi-Fi calling or cell calling. There are some options depending on the phone that you have that if the Wi-Fi is down, you can still use your roaming.
Okay.
So outside of your Wi-Fi connection, but yes, no, on regular channels, it absolutely would be a good idea to have a separate connection based on how many people are utilizing the system from home, right?
Right.
So if you have people who end up going back into a work environment or back into school environment, right? Because that's usually the real drain on the system right now is the number of school children that are on internet, not because they're not all the time on their phone, but again, on the larger systems within the home.
But the drain is not just on the system, it's also on the parents.
Oh, right, exactly. And the battery of the computer and everything else. All right, like you have timeshares going on in most homes on who gets to use what system at what time or who gets to use what office at what time. I have a conference call at this time. No, I have a meeting with my teacher at this time. So I'm sure there are a lot of things to consider. I'm looking at a lot of what we're talking about today, not only for use right now, pandemic, but to use when you are able to go back into office. So the strain should not be as significant once buildings are able to reopen.
Okay, that is true. That is true. So I want to go back to collaboration again for a minute, because that is in my mind, I know you mentioned the three: communication, collaboration, conferencing. In my mind, with this shift that we're having, that is the key. That's the cog in my opinion. So I want to spend a little bit of time, if you don't mind, on that. So what just to dive a little deeper, like what should I look for? Like what are the items I should look for in collaboration?
Okay, so in a collaboration tool.
Yeah.
Just give me a moment to collect.
She's processing.
I am processing, right.
She doesn't want to do the whole Tourette's thing anymore.
Right? I want to get them all in.
While she's thinking, guys, I got to tell you, Beth Marchiano is a superhuman being, as you know. I'm a huge fan. The only problem that she has is she roots for the wrong baseball team. But I won't say which one. But anyway, I think she
can. You can. They might actually feel more sorry for me. What team it is. I am born, bred, raised, live, work, and play in Maryland. So I am a Baltimore Orioles fan and a Baltimore Ravens fan. And I'm a pretty heavy duty sports fan, as Frank already knows, like pretty heavy duty. But
he knows the names of the players and the stats, guys.
Right, yeah.
That's a rare thing.
Right, that I do. So we always joke because obviously in the Beltway here, draft day that just happened was the Redskins Super Bowl. So we'll just
That's funny.
That's our funny. Yeah, here we go. You got your Super Bowl dumping here. Anyway, so I like to break things down in the number 3 or 5, right? It's usually more digestible. So for collaboration, I'm looking at 5 things, right? Like if I go in and need to help someone figure out a tool that they need, or do they need to be on a collaborative platform in the first place, I'm going to break it down into 5. What's your purpose for it? What is the purpose that you need to use this platform for? Is it for project management? Is it for lead gen? Is it for both? Like, what is the purpose that this platform needs to be created? What is the purpose? The second thing would be, is it for staff, clients, or both, right? Are you using it for a combination of the two, or is it really only staff that are doing it, or is it just for client use? I'm looking at automation features, right? The more you can automate, the more productive the staff can be, if that's the purpose, or the clients can get more information, right? So automations, what does it allow for? What does that workflow look like? I'm looking for time tracking. And I know people are probably going to cringe when they hear that, but I don't do it as a gotcha for my team. I use time tracking for 2 purposes and 2 purposes only. Is it taking longer for a team member to get something done, and then thereby do I need to do a better job of training or assigning duties? And the other one is, do I need to do a better job in doing proposals, right? Like I do proposals frequently on work that needs to be done, why people would hire us. And if I don't have a really good grasp on how long it takes to do something, how can I properly charge for it, right? And it could be at the detriment to the person hiring me, right? Like I could be so over inflated that that's ridiculous, or it could be at the detriment to the team where they're doing a lot of extra work and, I'm not being profitable on it. So I like time tracking, not so much as did you do your job, but do I need to train someone better, or do I need to do a better job at the proposals? And then the other thing that I like to look for is internal communication. So are there chat features? Are there comment features? Are there features outside of the project? Is it only in the project? Like, what are the offerings within that collaborative platform? And what can I do with that? And does it house certain things, right? So like, the features, that does it allow me to attach files to it? Can I upload a picture? Can, I send things directly from it? What are the features that it has, and how can it integrate with other things that I might use that it may not have, right? So for example, most collaborative platforms are not going to have an invoicing billing feature that is like a QuickBooks, right? Like you usually have to do a connection to it, or import, or allow the connection to happen. So does it integrate well with things that are a must in my business?
Yeah. Like, but you can use, and a lot of these things, and I don't want to get too technical, but a lot of these things you can, if it doesn't have a connection, you can usually get it through a thing called Zapier or Zapier, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I guess that's this is 101. That one will be 102. So we won't go there.
Yeah, Zaps, I do like Zaps, but it depends on the platform, right? Because it can get really interesting. Yeah. You have to figure out, did something fail on the platform side, on the side, like on the receiving platform? But if you need it, it does work really well.
It does. But to your point though, Beth, try to find tools that are already connecting, because that eliminates that issue. So,
well, it also eliminates pricing, right? I mean, it's more cost effective to get everything in one place.
That's right. All right. So, I mean, we touched on communication, we touched on collaboration twice actually. But the one thing that I keep neglecting, and I don't want to neglect it, is conferencing.
Okay.
So, how does all that tie in? You know, how does the whole conferencing tie into this whole puzzle that you've given us here?
Sure. So you're talking about video conferencing, or would you like me to talk about both that and teleconferencing?
Let's do both, because I mean, I think this is the world of video,
Mhm.
but people forget about teleconference.
Sure.
They really do.
Well, there's also some video fatigue, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's just some fatigue going on there, and sometimes it's quicker just to have something answered in a phone call.
Yep.
So teleconferencing, there's a couple of platforms out there that allow it for free. You may already have it in the uh, telephone system that you currently have with your office, and it is allowing things, because some of them are like launching, here's some online platforms that tie into your office. Or if you do like a VoIP system, there's conferencing already allowed in there, which is everyone can dial in. You have multiple people on the call. The drawbacks about those kind of conferences are you just want to make sure that people are either muted, or that they are the ones who are talking need to be the ones talking. And why I say that is, just like any other meeting in office, you always have one or two people that elongate it, right? Like, so basically the meme that's going around, this is another meeting that could have been in an email. So you definitely do want to make sure that the teleconferencing piece that you're doing is agended, right? Like you have an agenda, you have things that you need to talk about, you touch base on it, and that one person is in fact conducting the meeting. It's just like anything else. You want to make sure that you have that person in charge, and I don't mean in charge in a bad way, I mean in charge in a let's be thoughtful, move forward and move on. And you want a timed conference. You don't want it to be any longer than an hour, because again, people drop off, people speak over each other, and it just isn't as succinct. So if you need to schedule another half an hour, then do so. If it needs to be an hour, that's fine. I do all of my calls in 15 or 30-minute increments, but I have an agenda. They have the agenda before the call, so that it's not a surprise what we're going to be talking about and people have to try and think on the spot. They're actually given a little bit of time to prepare for it. And then, we have okay, we'll have to table this, or can you do some more research and we'll touch base the next time we speak, and then set that next time. So for teleconferencing, it could be a really valuable tool. The other thing I like about teleconferencing, though, is that it can be recorded. So you can have a recording, you can throw it into any collaborative platform if they allow for those files. You can re-listen to it. That's important. Sometimes on just regular calls, you can't hear it again. At least on a platform, you can record it and then have someone transcribe it if you need to. Or some of them have transcribing tools already. It just depends on what your purpose is, right? Going back to that, here's the reasons. Your purpose, is it for yourself and your clients? What do you want out of this? And then pick up what is the best practice. But teleconferencing can be a really useful tool if used properly. Video conferencing, however, is a whole nother thing. Video conferencing, and I hope that we have a chance to talk about leveraging, if you're okay with that, because I really would like to give some,
Hey, the floor is yours. The floor is yours,
okay.
Beth.
So for video conferencing, there's so many things that are available, right? Like you can, there's GoToMeeting, there's Zoom, there's Uber Conference, Skype, which Skype personally is still around. There is a Skype for Business, but that's going away. FaceTime, there's some of these platforms like Ring Central and Line 2 are launching their own video platforms with it. There's Google. Google has a video platform. So there are a number of ways. Microsoft Office, the Teams has a video platform. There are a number of ways that you can use video. What I would say to you is this: it is an incredibly effective tool when used properly. Incredibly effective tool. In pandemic times, it's a necessity, right? Like people are really kind of gravitating towards it, and how do we do things differently? But this will be an absolute necessity after. Ways to use video conferencing. I mean, obviously now people are having it just for personal use, right? Like you can talk to other people. This is a great way to stay in touch with your team. We talked yesterday a lot about how do I, make sure you're communicating with your team personally, not just about work. You can use it for prospect meetings. You can use it for networking. A lot of companies and professional organizations are now using video for conferencing, virtual happy hour conferencing. You can use it for training sessions, think tank sessions. If you're having a problem, you can talk with other like-minded business owners or other people in the industry that you can, do some, how do we mitigate this particular issue that we're having, or what do we do to combat these concerns? And then you can also use them for productivity. And one of the ways that I use video conferencing, and I mean literally at least weekly, I don't know of any person who runs a business that can't say this following statement: it's just easier if I do it myself.
Yeah, I know.
It takes a lot longer.
I'm guilty of that.
Guilty, right? It takes a lot longer to train someone, then you have to go over it. I leverage video conferencing for training, and I don't have another soul on it. I use Zoom a lot, so I like Zoom. I like the other ones too. They have their drawbacks and their positives, but I do prefer Zoom personally. Zoom has a way that you can schedule a meeting, which is the normal way to schedule something and have people join in. Or you can do host a meeting, and host a meeting can be with just yourself. So what I'll do is I'll click host a meeting, start recording, and I will do the task that is just easier if I did it. I record it, and then I throw it out to my team and say, learn this because you're doing it next time. And what it is able to do is now I have a video bank full for my team to review. They can look at the task that I did and review it over and over if necessary. So it stops the calls to me about how do I do something. But it also enables me to do some onboarding. So if I onboard a prospective, not prospective, if I hire an employee, I will have, here's your onboarding video bank. You need to go through all of these things. Then I set up a meeting, because then they can ask me more pertinent questions and be thoughtful about the questions, as opposed to the ongoing never-ending training, which technically training should always be ongoing and never-ending, but I mean the scheduled kind, right? Like you want to make sure that your team has what they need to get the work done, and then do your weekly trainings that are necessary for individualized training. But Zoom or any other video platform, they kind of operate the same. Use videos to do a lot more. You can have a video introduction to your business. You can have a video that you create that is in your email thumbnail that comes up at the bottom of everyone. You can have an onboarding client process where you have just a generic video about welcome. This is how you can get in touch with us. We talked about communication yesterday.
Yes.
Video for a number of different reasons, but the one thing that you want to do is try to do a video, especially if you need to feel the temperature of the room. If you need to know if you're doing a proposal and someone's getting it, doing something where you can't get visual cues. I don't know about you, but if I'm training someone, I can tell right away when they're not paying attention. They just glaze over and they start getting that lost.
Yeah.
Or all of a sudden,
done that.
Right, they were staring directly at me and now they're off in the side, so you can kind of regain control, help them sort of, refocus, or if you need to go over the process again. But do not think that video is going away. It is overwhelming right now. I think people are getting that video fatigue right now, but you can absolutely leverage it. Another good way to leverage it too is client meetings. If you have clients that you go to meet with them and they don't come into your office, right? Like there are a number of businesses that clients come to you, but there are others that you go to them. This could be an incredible tool to use as an offset, meaning schedule. I do monthly client meetings, right? So every month I try to get in front of my clients just to see how they're doing, what's going on, is there anything different that needs to happen? Just check in. Typically, I'm doing different check-ins, but especially for I don't want to say fix it and forget it, but the ones that you're just doing ongoing work and there's no real changes, you still want to check in. I try to go to them, but I also do it in a quarterly rotation. So 2 months of video, one month in person, 2 months on video, 1 month in person, 2 months on video, 1 month in person. That way I'm still touching them once a month, but I'm maximizing the time out of office, because every time I'm out of my home office, even though I work remotely, I'm traveling. What am I able to do during that travel time, right? So when you can leverage these platforms to do a lot more for you, you're able to see the benefit of it even after pandemic.
You know, one thing real quick on that, one thing that I've also done in the past, I started doing this, I want to say the last 8 months, 9 months. I was having a problem with some of my clients. I mean, I give them monthly reports, and I try to meet with them monthly. A lot of my clients, however, they are very busy and sometimes they just don't have time to go over the reports. So what I do is, you know, because sometimes what they tell me is, Frank, as long as the phone's ringing, I don't care, right? And that's cool, but I don't like that. So what I do when they can't meet because our schedules just don't, you know, connect well, is I record myself going over the report and then send them the email, and then they can review it at their own time. If they have any questions, they have it. But at least I know it's like I touched them and I emailed them, say, hey, here's the report for, you know, April's report. We weren't able to connect, but here's I did a description line by line.
Right. And that's perfect too, because that shows value added, right? Like, I know it's
Right.
a word that keeps going around, but the value added is that although there might not be that synergy with schedules, is that you still feel it's important enough for them to understand what you're doing for them, and then they have less questions later. So anytime you can put information in front of clients, and I'll be completely honest, if they are outsourcing work or they are having someone else do it, most of the time it's because that's not their strength.
Right.
Because they'd be doing it, or it's not what's revenue generating for them, right? Not the work that they need to do to generate the revenue. So anytime that you can give them something in a written form but also a visual is always going to be helpful, because you don't know what kind of learner they are. And if you know you can reach both sides of them, that's going to be much more beneficial, and people are going to remember that.
Yep.
The one thing that I do have to say in a caveat to all of this is make sure that if you have compliance that you need to follow, that you are in fact following those compliant platforms. Like, you're just not using, we've talked about certain things like Zoom is great, right? Like, Zoom's wonderful, but if you're not using a HIPAA compliant Zoom and you are HIPAA and what you're doing is meeting with, discussing, or any other PHI related stuff, then you're not in compliance, right? So make sure
Right.
that what you're doing, you are following compliant structures. But every platform that, meaning the 3 types of online categories, the communication, collaboration, and conferencing, have compliant pieces, not all of them. So you do have to do your research on it, or, just make sure that you're asking the right questions.
There you go. Awesome. Man, this is like I told you guys. I mean, I hope you listened to me. Did you take your notes? And if you didn't, download this puppy, because you're gonna need to listen to it again. She dropped a lot of knowledge in. I just have one more question before I let her go. She's a very busy woman, so I don't want to tie her up here too long. But I mean, we talked about a lot of things. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Like, are there any other considerations that we might have missed?
So
I need to touch on.
I guess what I would say to that is that there's some tips that you can use, maybe. So there's definitely consideration. Security is always a consideration, but there's some tips that you can use too, especially when you are using a video and or chat platform. Just like anything else, if you're using a chat, you want to make sure that you're chatting with the right people, right? Like, you just don't want to send information, because if you selected the wrong button, and you just chatted or sent information via text and it's the wrong client information, that's not, going to be good for you. Either it's going to be a PR nightmare, or you could have said something in written form that now holds you accountable. For example, I've had people that have sent, oh, well, this is only going to cost you X. They were talking to the wrong client. And then now they had a job that they basically said that they do for, and it was not even remotely close to what they would have charged.
Wow.
They actually lost money on that. So again, you need to be careful, right? Exactly. So be very careful with that. You definitely want to make sure that you are in fact communicating with the right person in any of those platforms. If you're on video platform, you want to make sure that you are, we've seen so many how not to be on a video conference lately, right? Like make sure you're wearing clothing. That's been a big, make sure that you are, not doing things in certain rooms you shouldn't be, such as going to the restroom while you're on the phone. But some of the things that I don't think have been discussed more thoroughly are, if you are on a video, what is behind you? Not necessarily you and your appearance. And I don't even mean anything inappropriate. I mean, a lot of us who are using at least work home spaces could have a whiteboard behind us, or could have, projections for the month. But you could also have information on there that's not appropriate. So I had a video conference a couple of weeks ago with a physician and trying to help them become compliant with their services that they were offering patients for telehealth and video conferencing. And in our video conference, the whiteboard behind him had patient names and diagnosis on it, so that he knew exactly what he had to go through in order to make calls. And I'm like, shut your video off now. I just want to bring to your attention this. You either need to, change your environment, or you need a different whiteboard, or, you need to do it in a different method, because I should not be able to see patient information. Now, luckily, I was already employed, so we had that BAA agreement in place, so
right.
fine. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't had other calls.
He's probably done it before.
Right, could have been. So you want to make sure the environment around you, although it may be aesthetic and, you're all, looking good and your hair looks good, and I don't know whose does in this pandemic, but good for you if it is. You definitely want to make sure that information is behind you. With that being said, you also want to make sure the information isn't in front of you. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing a share screen of any kind, only have open the application that you need to share. So every time I do a video conference, and especially if I'm presenting, I only have the window for the web open that the video is going to be done on. And then in the background will only be maybe the PDF, or if I'm showing a YouTube video to someone, like whatever the case may be, that's the only things I have up. I can't possibly click on my QuickBooks by mistake. I can't click on my emails and then there's a laundry list of things coming in there. Right. I'm sharing, financials. I'm not sharing HIPAA related, anything like that. So you want to have your environment both on desktop and behind you looking good if you're doing video. And then the last thing that you should consider is security. And we went over this yesterday, but it is worth repeating. If you do not have protective measures in place and training for your team, then you are going to be exposed to risk. We're already at risk. Anything online is going to be. It doesn't matter who you are and where you work. We all know of major corporations that have been hacked, and major corporations that have had data breaches, and just for kicks and giggles, and I said a different word there, I'm very proud of myself. There are so many things that are going on, and for those businesses, they can recover pretty easily because they have these measures in place, whether it be protective insurances, or if it is how they're going to do their risk management analysis. Smaller businesses don't always have that luxury. So the more that you train your team on, don't click on a link if it doesn't smell right, don't help out anybody if it doesn't feel right, don't click. And also, if they have the protective measures on their devices, especially laptops such as adware, malware, what's the other one? Ransomware. So you definitely want to make sure that all of those are in place, and they can be done for relatively inexpensive. I think most, and I mentioned this yesterday too, between $50 and $100, and you're typically getting 2 years of protection, and they're really good.
Right.
So anytime that you can have security measures in place, whether it is that software piece or it is by training of your team, that is always going to help you too, because you want to protect what you've built.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before I let you go, first of all, I want to thank you, Beth, for coming again. But before I let you go, tell me something. I mean, it just dawned on me. I mean, you've given us a wealth of knowledge. You've enlightened us. I want to bless you a little bit here.
Oh,
Can
thank
you
you.
tell me who is your ideal client? Who do you ideally work with?
So that's a good question, because what I do is outsourced administrative services, right? Like
Right.
we run the gamut from, entry level things. I'm not a call center, so I don't do that kind of stuff, but I can get some calls in terms of, hey, I need to schedule this, right? All the way through to what I do, which is reevaluating businesses and making sure their processes are in place. Do they have the standard operating procedures? Do they have KPIs? And not from an HR perspective, but is the process working perspective, and everything kind of in between. So we do ongoing monthly work and we do project work, right? Like, so for certain businesses, it's easier to have an outsourced person do the project so that the flow and function of everyone else is status quo, right?
Right.
And I do a lot of training. Trainings are a big thing that I do. I will tell you, if I've done upwards of 25 trainings in the last 6 weeks, and almost all of it is on virtual platforms, like how to use a virtual platform specific to the business.
Right.
So I contracted with the business. I train them, I train their team, and we do ongoing support. But that's also short term. Once you know how to use something, you're functioning pretty well. You can do your own online support, etc. And then I have people that I do the month-to-month stuff, and it's just, supporting their day-to-day. What I find works best are the following two things. Someone who is ready, willing, and able for the help. Because sometimes you hear overwhelmed, but then it's, I'm not ready for this, or I don't know how I can trust. And I do believe that the pandemic has changed the thought process a little bit. Like, I get
Right.
that it can be done from home. So the ready, willing, and able, and that they are in an environment where they welcome the guidance, right? Like, sometimes when I get into doing something, if there's that back and forth about this isn't going to work, then that's the client that it's difficult to do things with. But for the most part, anyone who operates a business and needs remote support, we can do some work with. The ideal person is someone who wants to work with me, right? That's the ideal.
Is there a revenue requirement, like, any business between 2.5 million to 10 million, or is there like startups, so basically anyone who, okay. So, I mean, I'm going to make it my business to look for people. I mean,
Thank you.
again, you've blessed us so much with this. That's the least I can do. And I ask my listeners to please have your eyes and ears open out there too for any remote work that you may need, or someone that's not a part of this podcast you think can use someone like Beth. All her information, once again, on this episode, just like yesterday, will be in the show notes. But just in case, I want to ask her to repeat it one more time. How can people get a hold of you, Beth?
So there's always the standard email, which is B Marchiano, Marchiano at gsteammail.com. So that's B Marchiano at gsteammail.com. And then my office line is 443-501-2201. And my cell is 410-688-3433. And the name of the company is Growth Solutions Team. So you can certainly look us up on the World Wide Web.
There you
And
go.
our information is on there. We offer a variety of services. I run the administrative component.
Cool beans. Quick story before I let you go. I just want to, yeah. I work with Beth before, obviously. We have a great relationship. And there were two. I'm not here to promote any tools, but there are two tools that I have been using for years, and I thought I knew those tools pretty good. And Beth totally revamped the tool, made it look like I didn't even. I thought she was a custom builder or developer or something, and totally made it work like, wow, is this the same tool? Again, I'm not here to promote any tools, but
Right.
there were two of them that I was like, wow, I didn't even know they had that capability.
Thank you.
I'm a super user.
Right.
But on that note, I am going to bid farewell to this episode and let Beth get back to her busy day and her busy schedule. I will be back with you with a normal episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses this Friday with a topic that you do not want to miss. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but you don't want to miss it because it's going to help you, especially during this pandemic time. With that said, I will talk to you guys on Friday. Take care and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses, the podcast where you will discover all the latest and greatest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. Don't forget, any links that were mentioned during the broadcast will be available to you in the show notes, so be sure to grab them while you have the chance. Incidentally, if you have any topics that you would like for us to discuss on the show, be sure to send an email to the email provided in the show notes, or click the Contact Us link and let us know what topic you would like us to help you with, and we'll be sure to add it to our schedule. If you would like for Frank and his team to look at your digital marketing presence and give you a free evaluation, simply click the Request a Free Consultation link in the show notes to get a hold of them. That being said, until our next episode, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.